Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. All praise is due to Allah the Almighty, the Lord of the worlds. May Allah's peace, mercy and blessings be upon His final and last messenger, Muhammad. And may Allah's peace, mercy and blessings be upon each and every one of you, dear viewers, watching this new episode of your program, The Revelation, on Nile TV International. We are still discussing and exploring the characteristics and the distinguishing features of the Azhari approach. And in today's episode, we are picking up where we left in a couple of ones, and we are addressing the force of these characteristic features. And that's the correct and the appropriate appropriation of the Noble Quran, and that's using the verses of the Noble Quran in their correct and proper contexts. And of course, I'm sure that this is your reaction. This is a very important feature, and this is something that we really need to be aware of.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Read, in the name of your Lord who created.
Here, this is also the result of the previously mentioned features and characteristics. So it is as if having a continuous isnad, and by default having spent a lengthy duration of the time in the company of the scholars and the ulama and the shuyukh, and also developing a good command of the auxiliary or the instrumental sciences, and having a proper understanding of the higher and the noble objectives and purposes of the Sharia, this brings about a very important outcome when it comes to the person who practices and who seeks knowledge in light of this manhaj or this methodology. And that's, this person will be able to appropriately, if you like, be engaged in the verses of the Noble Quran. And he or she will be able to use and interpret the Quranic verses in a right way and in a meaningful manner. So, for instance, he or she would not come to a verse that was revealed regarding a particular incident, and they would apply it in a general mood or in a absolute manner, and also vice versa, i.e., they would not come to a verse that was revealed regarding a general context, and then they would take it and decontextualize it and twist its meaning in order to apply it to a particular or a very particular context and incident which has its own relevant verses and appropriate understanding. And of course, we have many examples for this. And for sure, this is again a source. I mean, neglecting such a very important component is a very important source for a lot of the understanding that takes place when it comes to many of the verses of the Noble Quran, especially the ones that has to do with women and other issues.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Read, in the name of your Lord who created.
As a matter of fact, And due to the limited time that we need to do, that we have here, we need to do the following. First of all, we need to be objective. We need to be academic in front of ourselves before dealing with others. We need to have this integrity and to have this academic confidence when it comes to how we deal with the Noble Quran. Because it is not only about the Quran that this decontextualization can distort its meaning. But when you come to any literary work, be it a novel or a poem, or even if it's a love affair novel or a written text, if you are going to apply the unethical and the unprofessional game of cutting and pasting, you can end up having a text that legitimizes killing people, spreading horror, targeting non-combatant civilians. But this is the thing here. We need to have this ethical integrity and moral uprightness to deal with the Quran and to cite and to quote the Quran in an academic manner. This is a very important thing, because unfortunately the ordinary people, be they here in the Arab and the Muslim countries, and also even if it's in the West or any other part of the world, we are always caught between two extremes. On one hand, we have those who claim to be acting as Muslim scholars and acting in the name of Islam, and they decontextualize the verses out of their proper and common sense context. Then they decontextualize them and they put them in a particular, especially an angry context, in order to augment their own rhetoric and their own discourse, in order to inflame the feelings and the sentiments of Muslims. And also, on the other hand, we have Islamophobes and people who try to take advantage of notions like xenophobia and fear-mongering, and they do the same. As a matter of fact, they also take the Quranic verses out of their context and they twist their meaning, and also they feed with this a very angry mood and way of thinking for achieving something that will never amount to face and confront the repercussions that will result of such a twisted and, like I said, unethical way of dealing with texts. So here what we need to do is to reclaim this narrative, and we need to read the verses in the proper context that they were revealed, or that they were revealed into. And that's by reading the previous verses and also the following verses. But not to take a verse out of context and you tell me this is what the Quran says. My answer is definitely you are erroneous and you are mistaken, and your approach is one that's not academic and not professional. Rather, what you need to do is to look into what the Quran says and look into the previous verses and also the following verses, and to see also what does the Quran say about this in other places in the Noble Quran. Because we cannot pick and choose from the chapters of the Quran. Rather, the Noble Quran constitutes a whole objective entity. And this is just part of how the Muslim scholars described the academic way of how we deal with the Quran. Alongside with this, we also need to rely on what the credible and what the reliable Muslim scholars have said in this regard. But when you ignore all of this and you just decontextualize a verse, as a matter of fact, you are doing nothing but following your own wishful thinking and your own agenda, but you are not being academic or professional or objective. So, my dear viewers, this is the fourth of the features of the Azhari academic approach, and that's the correct appropriation of the Noble Quran. But as a matter of fact, and sadly, and it is very heartbreaking, when it comes to other approaches, they just want to open the Noble Quran and take whatever they like and discard whatever they like, which is, of course, an approach that cannot be taken seriously or even considered as an academic, valid approach. That's it for today's episode, and I leave you in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us beneficial knowledge and to make us of those who act according to the beneficial knowledge that they know. As always, you can watch this episode and the previous ones on the official Facebook page and the rest of the social media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.